A few days ago, I put out a video called 8 Ways to Use Claude So Well It Feels Illegal. 8 tactical moves that, used together, separate Claude power users from everyone else. There were more than 8. There were always going to be more than 8. So today, here are 8 more. Same rules as last time. No coding, no tech background. Just the moves, ready for you to use. Let's go. Quick hi if you're new. I'm Aimee, 42-year-old Sydney lawyer, going through what feels like the most interesting decade of technology in my lifetime, and trying to figure out how to use it well in public on this channel. If you watched the first 8, you already know the shape of how I talk about this stuff. Tactical, conversational, no jargon. These 8 sit alongside those 8. 16 moves total. Pick the ones that match where you are right now, and use them on something that matters to you this week. Quick aside about the voice. The voice you're hearing right now isn't actually mine. I'm Australian, and this voice is very much not. I'm working in the gaps between 11 Labs and HeyGen, trying to get something that sounds like my accent and my cadence. The voice will catch up. For now, you'll just have to learn who I am through the script itself. Now I know you don't want time wasters, so let's dive in. Move number 1. Voice mode. I had to put this first because it is the most literal game changer I know when it comes to Claude. Try speaking to Claude rather than typing to it, but using voice mode, the little mic next to the text bar. You press it, speak into it, and it transcribes it. Not perfectly, but good enough. And then you press send. This is such a fundamentally different thing than typing to these types of AI. ChatGPT and others also have a developed voice mode function, and not that many people mention it. When you type, you're typing what you already know how to articulate. When you talk, you're thinking out loud. You stumble, you trail off, you self-correct, you wander, and Claude follows. It can handle messy speech better than messy typing because it doesn't try to be clever about your typos. So here's the move. When you're stuck on something. When you can't articulate the question you actually have. When you're driving, walking the dogs, sitting in the school pickup line. Open the Claude app and just start talking to it. You can think out loud about a problem and have Claude reflect things back to you. You start talking, you get tangled, you untangle yourself, and Claude follows along the whole time, picking up on what you actually mean, even when you fumble the words. It is brilliant for rehearsing a difficult conversation before you have to actually have it. You run through what you want to say, how you might say it, how the other person might respond. You can even ask Claude to play the other person, so you get realistic pushback before the real conversation. It is great for debriefing from a meeting that just happened, while everything is still fresh in your mind. What was said, what wasn't said, what you forgot to bring up, what someone seemed strange about. You talk through all of it, and Claude helps you make sense of what you noticed. And the use I find myself coming back to most is talking through a decision I'm stuck on. You explain to Claude why you're stuck, and it asks you questions back, conversationally, the way a thoughtful friend would when you can't quite see your own situation clearly. Those questions surface things you haven't articulated yet, and by the time you've answered them, you usually know what you actually want to do. Actually, I just thought of another time I use it. My partner and I are both into the voice mode thing. He likes to have the AI talk back as well, which I find weird. Different strokes, that sort of thing. But we'll sometimes use it as a mediator if we're having an argument. For example, Claude, does this sentence really sound condescending? Or the other day, we both had different ideas about a design feature we wanted in the lounge room, and so we just introduced who it was as we passed it between each other and added a dual response. The other thing voice mode does is it gets you out of the laptop. You don't have to be at your desk to do thinking work with Claude anymore. You can be folding laundry, you can be walking around your house, you can be in the bath. The relationship gets way more useful when it's not tied to your chair. So if you haven't tried voice mode yet, just open it once today. Pick a real thing you're working on and talk to Claude about it. See what changes. Quick pause before we go into move 2. If voice mode alone has changed something for you, hit subscribe. There's 7 more like that coming. Move 2. Drop the whole document in. Most people use Claude for short questions and short answers. They forget that Claude can read entire books, entire contracts, entire code bases, entire quarters of email history in one go, and then answer questions about all of it. This is what's called context window, and Claude's context window is massive now. So here's what the move looks like in practice. You're trying to understand a 40-page contract you've been sent. Most people would either read it themselves over the weekend or pay a lawyer to read it. The third option that almost nobody is taking is to drop the PDF straight into Claude and say, explain this to me like I'm reasonably smart but not a lawyer. Flag anything unusual. Tell me what to push back on. Or you're trying to learn from a research paper. Most people skim the abstract. You can drop the whole paper in and ask Claude to walk you through it, section by section. Pause where you don't follow. Explain it in your own terms. Or you're trying to understand a code base. Drop the whole code base in. Ask Claude what it does. Ask where the bug probably is. Ask what would break if you changed this function. Or you're trying to figure out what's actually happening in a long email thread. Paste the whole thing in. The back and forth from the last 3 weeks. Every reply all. And ask Claude to tell you what's actually going on. Where the disagreement is. Who agreed to what the latest position is. Email threads get tangled fast, and Claude can untangle them in about 10 seconds. You can also drop multiple documents in at once, a contract and the proposal that came before it, 2 versions of the same draft, a research paper and the original article it cites. Then you can ask Claude to compare them, find inconsistencies, tell you where they diverge, which is the kind of cross-reference work that used to take a junior associate half a day. The pattern across all of these is, instead of summarizing the content to Claude in your own words, give Claude the actual material. Claude is way better at reading the original than at guessing what's in it from your summary. And once you do this once, you'll never go back. Because the next time you have a document you're avoiding because it's long and dense, you'll remember you don't have to read it cold. You can read it with Claude. Move 3. Personas inside projects. If you watched episode 1, you know I'm obsessed with projects. They're the single biggest time saver for anyone using Claude regularly. But there's a thing you can do inside a project that takes it to another level. And that's giving Claude a persona that persists across every conversation in that project. Here's what I mean. Inside my fiction writing project, I have Claude set up as a brutally honest senior editor at a major literary publisher. 20 years of experience. Doesn't suffer hedging, catches every cliche on first read. And whenever I open a new conversation inside that project, Claude is already that editor. I don't have to say, you are a senior editor. The project context already says that. So when I drop in a new chapter, Claude doesn't respond like the default friendly assistant, going, what a great scene. Claude responds like a senior editor, which is exactly what I want when I'm trying to make the work better. You can do this for any ongoing thing. Your business project, set Claude up as the COO who has been with you from day one. Your legal project, set Claude up as outside counsel. Your fitness project, set Claude up as a coach who's slightly impatient and doesn't accept excuses. Your kids' homework help, set Claude up as a patient teacher who explains things 3 different ways until something lands. The persona changes everything Claude says without you having to re-prompt every single conversation. So, step 1, pick an ongoing project area in your life. Step 2, write 1 paragraph describing the kind of person who would be the perfect colleague for that area. Step 3, paste it into your project context. That paragraph becomes the lens Claude looks at every conversation through. And one thing to keep in mind, the more specific you can be about how the persona should respond, the better. Not just you are a senior editor, but you are a senior editor who has read everything I've ever written, who doesn't suffer hedging, who flags overwriting, who tells me when a chapter is too long, who points out the metaphor I keep reaching for. The specificity compounds. A vague persona gives you vague responses. A specific persona gives you the actual colleague you were trying to hire. Move 4. The 1 to 10 critique. This one is tiny, but it has saved me hours. When you ask Claude, what do you think of this? You get back a response that's structured to be helpful and balanced, which sounds great. But the problem is, you can't actually tell from that response whether your draft is good or terrible. Everything Claude says feels measured. The fix is one word. Rate this. Rate this draft 1 to 10. Then tell me what's stopping it from being a 10. What that does is it forces Claude to take a position. Now Claude has to pick a number, and Claude has to defend it. And suddenly you have actual data about where your draft is in the world. If Claude rates your draft a 6 and explains what the missing 4 points are, that's a roadmap. If Claude rates it an 8 and explains what's already working, that's confidence to ship. If Claude rates it a 3, you have a serious problem, and Claude just told you exactly why. The numbers themselves don't have to mean anything precise. The point is the act of rating forces a position, which forces specificity, which gives you something you can actually use. Try it next time you ask Claude for feedback. Just add, rate this 1 to 10 to the end of the prompt. The whole quality of the response changes. And the follow-up that takes it to another level is, show me what a 10 would look like. Now Claude has to actually produce the version it's been measuring yours against. Sometimes the 10 Claude produces is exactly what you needed. You just couldn't see it from inside your draft. Sometimes Claude's 10 is wrong for your context, and seeing it wrong shows you what your actual 10 looks like. Either way, you've moved forward. You can also do this against multiple drafts at once. Paste 3 versions, rate them all 1 to 10, tell me which one is closest to a 10 and why. Now you've got a ranking, a reason, and a direction in 30 seconds, which is faster than most people can read the 3 versions, let alone compare them. Move 5. Iterate, don't one-shot. The biggest mistake people make with Claude is they treat it like Google. They type a question, they get an answer. They paste the answer somewhere, done. That is not how to get the best out of Claude. The way to get the best out of Claude is iteration. Here's the pattern. Claude gives you something. You don't say, great, thanks. You say, now make it 30% shorter. Claude gives it back to you. You say, now make it more conversational. Claude gives it back to you. You say, now find what's missing. Claude gives it back to you. You say, now write 3 different opening lines and tell me which is strongest. By the time you're done, the thing in front of you is 10 times better than the first response was, because you've passed it through 5 rounds of revision, each one targeted, each one specific. This is exactly how a writer works with an editor. The first draft is never the final draft. Every draft after the first one is sharper than the last. You can do that with Claude in 15 minutes for something that would take a human editor a week. The key thing is the prompts you use during iteration. Make it shorter, make it punchier, soften the tone, add an example, remove anything that sounds like ChatGPT, find the assumption I'm making, argue against it. Every one of those is a one-line prompt that improves the work massively. One thing to know about iteration is when to stop. The pattern I found is the first 3 rounds usually improve the work significantly. Rounds 4 and 5 sharpen specific things. After round 6 or 7, you're often making it worse, not better. You're polishing past the point where polish helps. So my rule is roughly 3 to 5 rounds of iteration on anything substantial, then commit to the version you've got and ship. And the other useful pattern, if you've iterated for a while and you've lost the thread of what made the original good, you can ask Claude, of all the versions I've shown you, which had the strongest opening line? Which had the cleanest argument? Which had the most natural rhythm? Sometimes Claude will point you back to round 2, and that's the one to take forward. The best draft isn't always the latest draft. So next time you get a response from Claude that's good but not great, don't accept it. Iterate. Move 6. The pre-mortem. If you've never heard the term, a pre-mortem is the opposite of a post-mortem. Instead of looking back after something failed and asking what went wrong, you look forward before something starts and ask, if this fails, what will the reason have been? It's one of the most underused decision tools in business and life, and Claude makes it ridiculously easy. Here's the move. You've got something coming up, a launch, a pitch, a career move, a big purchase. A relationship conversation you're not sure how to have. Open Claude. Describe what you're about to do. And then ask the question. Imagine it's 6 months from now and this didn't work. What's the most likely reason it failed? Claude will give you a list. Some items will be obvious. Some items will be things you'd actively buried. Some items will be things you'd literally never thought of. You take that list and you do 2 things with it. You fix the obvious failures up front, and you accept the unfixable failures consciously so they don't surprise you if they happen. That single move turns risky decisions into informed risky decisions, and informed risky decisions are the only kind worth making. I do this for every significant decision now, every business move, every channel pivot, every difficult conversation. I never skip it, and it has saved me from at least 3 things I would otherwise have shipped that would have been embarrassing. And the variation I use almost as much is the post-mortem. After something has gone well, I'll ask Claude, what made this work? What did I do right? What's the pattern I can use again? Because success is often less examined than failure, but it's where the replicable patterns actually live. The pre-mortem stops bad outcomes. The post-mortem extracts the formula behind good ones. You want both running. Move 7. What should I be asking you that I'm not? This one is for the situations where you don't know what you don't know. You're researching a topic you've never been in before. You're considering a decision in an area where you don't have expertise. You're trying to learn a new skill from scratch. The mistake most people make is they ask Claude questions they already know how to ask. But that just gives them the answers they could have found on Google. The unlock is when you flip it. You tell Claude what you're trying to do, and then you say, what should I be asking you that I'm not? What are the questions a smart person in this field would ask that I don't know to ask yet? Claude will come back with the actual questions, the ones that an expert would already know to consider. And then you can ask those questions, and now you're getting expert-level depth on a topic you started knowing nothing about. This is the closest thing to having access to a smart friend in every field. Smart friends know what the right questions are. Most of us don't in fields outside our expertise. So whenever you're stepping into something new, that's the move. Don't try to ask the right questions yourself. Ask Claude what the right questions would be, and then ask them. And once you've asked those questions and got the answers, you can do it again. Tell Claude what you now know, and then ask, given what I just learned, what should I be asking now? Because the right questions at the start of learning something are not the same as the right questions once you've got a foundation. Layer the move. It compounds. By round 3, you're often asking questions that experts in the field haven't thought to ask themselves. Move 8. Reverse engineer the work you love. Pick anything. A piece of writing you wish you'd written, a speech that made you cry, an ad that made you click, a product page that made you buy something, a YouTube channel you watch on autoplay, a song lyric you can't stop thinking about. Paste the thing into Claude and ask, reverse engineer this. What's the structure? What's the voice? What's the rhythm? What's the formula underneath? Why does it land for me when 90% of work in this category doesn't? Claude will pull it apart and give you back the skeleton. Then you use the skeleton to make your own work in your own voice. This is how every artist learns. Reading other writers, watching other filmmakers, listening to other musicians. The reason being trained on the masters is because once you understand the structure, you can apply it to your own material. What Claude does is compress that learning. Instead of reading 100 novels to figure out what makes a great opening chapter, you can paste in the openings of 5 novels you love and ask Claude what they have in common. Whatever you do creatively, find 5 examples of the thing you wish you could make. Drop them all into Claude. Ask for the patterns, and then go make your version with the patterns you just learned applied to your material. This single move has shaped almost every channel I've built. I find the channels I love, I paste them into Claude, I ask what they're doing, and then I do my own version of it. It's also why I'm not worried about Claude making creators redundant, because the work has never been about the words. It's been about the taste. Claude can help you see structure. Only you can decide what to point that structure at. So that's 8 more. Jam-packed value. And to be honest, any one of them is going to change how you use Claude. It's currently my fave to use for most of what I'm trying to build, in life and business, but there's probably a fair bit in here you can tailor to Gemini, ChatGPT, etc. I am unabashedly a Claude AI fangirl right now, to be honest, but it's not to say that won't change. I provide my full stack in the description, and I update it as my setup changes. I'm Aimee. This is Renaissance. Now, go play.